gout is like a Chinese star, like one of those throwing stars, very sharp, like razor blades, and it will deposit into our joints. It'll deposit into the joints of our wrists and our hand, sometimes into our knee. It will also deposit most commonly into the small joints of your feet. It'll cause it to swell and enlarge to where people even try to stand up and take a step at all. They literally can't move. It's so debilitating. We're seeing this increase of people who are consuming high carbohydrate diets, processed foods, processed carbs, processed sugars, right? These highly ultra processed foods that they're consuming, poor quality oils, and they're the ones that are getting this gout, or they're susceptible to this gouty arthritis attack.
What is gout, and why is it, surprisingly, at least to me, on the rise?
Well, that's a really good question. I think gout is on the rise because poor diets continue to be prevalent in the United States.
Dr. Ron Dummar, I'm Nick. This is Community Health and Wellness, and this is the Be Well Now podcast. It was fascinating as a mid-30-something. Thought I was kind of healthy, did my blood labs through Community Health and Wellness, and then you analyzed them. And one of the dangers that I had on there was like, gout could be on the horizon. Like I was at danger of getting gout. And I was like, wasn't this the thing that kings used to get? And didn't Benjamin Franklin have gout? And I was like, I'm not morbidly obese. Anyway, I was super fascinated by gout. So give us the big picture on what it is and like why we should care.
Well, sure. Yeah. Gout is produced in the body. It's actually arthritis. It's an inflammatory arthritis that occurs as a result of purine breakdown. So purine is a compound that's found in certain plants. It's found in meat as well. It's actually in the cell of every living thing. So it's in us. It's in our bodies too. So purine will, as a result of the cell breakdown, it will be released into the body. So we have to process those purines. And in the process of doing that, sometimes we can have uric acid be produced. It's a byproduct of purine processing. So if we eat foods that are super high in purine, then we have a higher likelihood to develop uric acid crystals in the body.
Who's most danger of getting gout? That was a very technical explanation, and I'm glad to hear it because I know people always want the technical answer, but they also want to know like, what food should I avoid? What's causing it? What if I'm getting it and I don't even know it's happening?
Yeah, and that was
me.
That's the key too, is looking at, okay, what are the purine-rich foods or purine-high foods? And I say this with a caveat, really, because this is a very common answer. I would say that, well, if it's the purine-rich foods, and it's true, those foods that are high in purine, okay? So what are those foods? Those are foods like actually alcohol, especially beer, okay? Very high in purines. Foods like even processed, I wowould say, pasteurized dairy products are high in purine. Okay, if you get raw dairy, it's actually better for you, and it's less purine generating. Also, red meats, especially organ meats. You know, there's a big trend right now to consume organ meats, and I'm guilty of that too. I encourage organ meat consumption, but it does have a tendency, because it's so deep and rich in animal product, to basically provide a lot of purines that need to be broken down by the body. And in the process of consuming that food, in the process of breaking that down, we can run into a situation where our body has higher levels of uric acid produced.
So what is gout then? And what does it look like if I'm walking around with it? Because I had worked with a coworker who was, I think, probably in his mid to late 40s, and he was walking around in a walking boot.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think he mentioned having gout. And I mean, it's like, he wasn't the healthiest looking guy, but he wasn't the unhealthiest looking guy. And it was like, gout? So I saw that as another point of reference in my life of like, that didn't look pleasant, a walking boot.
And I think like Benjamin Franklin, I think we remember him as with like a crutch, right? Or a cane that he used to walk around with a lot because he had gout, severe episodes of gout. But essentially the way that it looks, it will deposit. Gout is like a Chinese star, like one of those throwing stars, very sharp, like razor blades, okay? And it will deposit into our joints. It'll deposit into the joints of our wrists and our hand, sometimes into our knee. It will also deposit most commonly into the small joints of your feet, okay? So if it deposits into those joints, and they're like little razor blades, and as you move around, you have razor blades in your joints, imagine the inflammation, the irritation, and the damage that's going to be caused there. So that's literally what gout feels like, what it looks like, right? It can cause swelling, redness, inflammation in the feet, in the toes, especially in that first digit, that first toe. It'll cause it to swell and enlarge to where people even try to stand up and take a step at all. They literally can't move. It's so debilitating.
So who typically got gout and who's getting it now? Because in the articles I was reading, it's becoming more prevalent, more common.
Yeah, the prevalence rate, I think, is congruent. We've talked a lot about fatty liver as well, and how fatty liver, we're seeing on the rise almost a decrease of alcohol fatty liver, and we're seeing an increase of non-alcoholic fatty liver. But in conjunction with that, we're seeing this increase of people who are consuming high carbohydrate diets, processed foods, processed carbs, processed sugars, right? These highly ultra-processed foods that they're consuming, poor quality oils, and they're the ones that are getting this gout, or they're susceptible to this gouty arthritis attack. Okay, so just like processed sugars, processed grains, all these processed foods that we're consuming are affecting our liver, it's actually also affecting our kidney and its ability to process the purines appropriately. And therefore we end up with these uric acid crystals and gouty arthritis.
More in males, females, what are the age ranges? Like who should be listening up right now before it's too late?
Yeah, more frequently it is found in males. We see it more often in them. And there is you could say maybe some biological diversity between males and females, but it's not selective. It's not entirely selective like, oh, we only affect males. It's not like that. But we do seem to see it more commonly in males. I also think that we tend to see more liver damage or fatty liver development in males as well. And I don't know that we have a very good answer for why it generally affects them more. It may just be that they're more prone to consume more meat. Men tend to be, more meat consumption driven, more alcohol consumption, meat, dairy. Those are generally those three that you're looking for. So if I'm going to give recommendation to a patient who's suffering with it, the majority of our patients who do suffer with gout are male. And I'll say to them, okay, just begin to reduce your meat consumption. And that meat that you do consume.
Meat or red meat?
Even especially, believe it or not, seafood. Seafood even has higher amounts of purines in it than even red meat. Okay, so organ meats are very high on the list of purines. But if you're looking at, okay, what do I want to reduce first as far as just a meat source, really seafood is probably the one you want to reduce first.
And you were saying reduce meat and even the meat you do consume, and I interrupted you.
Yeah, even the meat that you do consume, you want to consume the best quality meats. Okay, so the meat that you do consume, say, okay, I'm going to source it the best possible. We had a conversation just before we got on air here about the type of meat and where we should source meat. And, really what we're looking for is as organically raised as possible, grass-fed. Sometimes they'll do grass-fed, grain-finished. Sometimes they'll do grass-fed, grass-finished, and they won't do grain-finished. Oftentimes you can actually find antibiotic-free cattle as well, and you can source your meat from those places. So there are definitely places to get more quality meat that doesn't have antibiotic exposure and pesticide exposure from the plants that they may be consuming, and it's more like natural. It's more nature-based, and so that's really what we're looking for. Even in your meat consumption is how do I make this not just a good choice to reduce my meat, but making the best possible meat choices I can.
How much meat should we be eating?
That's a really good question, Nick.
Because sometimes you hear the carnivore diet's the big one, and you should avoid carbs and what to eat and how much of it to eat. I know it's individual, but come on, help us out here.
So if you are
swimming in information, we don't know what to do.
If you are consuming the carnivore diet, it's likely that at some point you will have increased ferritin levels in your body, which is a sign generally of inflammation or iron dumping within the liver, some sort of disruption or dysfunction occurring there. Also, you will begin to likely have elevated uric acid formation within the body. So you really need to be paying attention to that, especially if you're on a carnivore diet, which a lot of people have success on the carnivore diet because they have autoimmune type of conditions that they're developing or have developed as a result of consuming certain plants or I would say more chemicals that are sprayed on plants is what they're consuming. And so they develop an autoimmune condition to those. So until they can actually heal from that, they have to stay away from plants, or they find they do better by consuming fewer plant-based products. So what they're consuming is, well, meat. If they go to only meat, high fat, high meat diets, they do really well. But at some point you have to be able to say, okay, maybe the problem really was just me sourcing those foods, those vegetables. Because if you look at uric acid as well, production in the body, we're looking for consuming quality vegetables. We want to have increasing the vegetables as much as possible, decreasing our meat consumption, not entirely, but decreasing that because it's taken over too much in the diet. So really increasing your veggies, decreasing your fats. And I would say, here, you want me to give you a quick tip? Because people probably want to hear this. Yeah. This is a quick tip. If you're like suffering from a gout attack, or you think that you're on the rise, or you got labs from your from your recent evaluation and your physical, and they're like, oh, your uric acid is up, and maybe you're close to developing gout. One thing that you could do is actually consume like a teaspoon of baking soda. I would even put that in capsules. It would work even better if you put it in capsules, 2 to 3 capsules of baking soda, and you consume that at night for 3-4 days in a row. And that will take your uric acid levels, because uric acid, it's an acidic process. Okay, it happens in an acidic environment. So if we can alkalize that environment, we can decrease the likelihood that uric acid crystal is going to form. Okay, so even consuming a little bit of baking soda at night, that's a quick tip, something that can reverse the course and turn it around really quickly.
If I don't have capsules at home and I'm just trying to use what you've given me, how do I consume the baking soda without capsules?
So just put it in water, a little bit in water. I'd say 4 to 8 ounces of water and a teaspoon, teaspoon of baking soda, stir it up and then drink it.
Like right before bed or after dinner?
Do it before bed. You don't want to do it when you're wanting to digest, because you want a nice acidic environment in the stomach in order to digest your food. Once you put the food in there, you need the acid all to be focused on consuming and breaking down those food products and then delivering it to the liver, those amino acid parts, right? So we don't want to consume baking soda near a meal, because it will just neutralize the acid and decrease your ability of your body to actually absorb nutrients.
That's good advice. What else? Like let's say they already have gout, right? Maybe it's a concerned spouse of a husband, and she's the one doing the research because he doesn't like doctors, and maybe he finally got this diagnosis, and it's like they may not even be in alternative health like this, and not to say this is alternative health, but it's kind of, that's the term.
It's traditional health, right? We're the tradition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because this goes back, I think you're not what is your approach to health? Is it alternative, traditional? And then we'll get to gout, but I like to kind of hear you riff on what you're all about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm not anti-Western medicine. I'm not anti-Eastern medicine. And I'm actually not anti-healing or what some people call woo-woo medicine, right? It's like, look at it and see if it works, if it's going to be functional or of utility within your current circumstance. So that's what I think is necessary for us to understand. If there's a catastrophic situation that occurs to me or a family member, a broken leg, a serious injury, a collision, where am I going to want them to be evaluated? You're going to want them to be evaluated with a significant amount of imaging, where there's high-level skilled emergency physicians available in the ER, right? You want them to be evaluated in a place where you feel like the catastrophe or the potentially catastrophic condition can be ruled out fairly quickly, okay? And that's what we want. I don't work in the emergency medicine department. That's not what I do. But I do feel like I bridge Eastern and Western medicine really well. And I think that that's what we need to do. We need a lot more places like that, because it's not about saying, oh, anti this, or we should never use that. No, it's about saying, when should I use that? And when is the appropriate time to? Because in reality, if the only people we're going to are the doctors who are trained in emergency medicine, are you having an emergency every time you go to the doctor? But that's their training. Like, that's what they're designed for, those catastrophic moments. Then why would you go to them? It's like the fire department, for instance. Let's say my house, I'm cooking on the stove. Okay, here's a story. I'm cooking on the stove, and I see this little fire. I get a little fire, gas fire. I'm like, oh shoot! I try to put that out. I put a little baking soda or something on it. Try to get a blanket, and now all of a sudden, before I could get to the blanket, it's like crawling up the back of the wall, and now my house is on fire. So what do? Do I get on my phone and call my homeopath? I don't get on the phone and say, hey neighbor, can you come over here quick and just help me, right? What I do is I get on the phone and say, oh my gosh, this fire is in my house. It's gotten out of my control. And I'm on the phone immediately with the emergency department, right? Fire, emergency, ambulance, whatever. They're all alerted to that. That's who I call. Okay. And they come in there. Now the house is like ablaze, and they've got great big hoses, right? And then they take their axes and they slash down the door, and they get in there and they try to save anything possibly that they can and salvage it and bring the body of the house back to homeostasis as quickly, efficiently, and as valiantly as they can. That's ultimately what they do. And then they leave and they're gone. And you're like, wow, I'm so glad we averted that danger. Okay. But you're left with, if you look at what you're left with, it's like, it's a sopping wet, charred house, and it's at homeostasis, you could say right now, but oh my gosh, it's certainly not in a place where it's healthy. You wouldn't say, wow, this is a vibrant, thriving home. Okay. So then what you do is, instead of getting on the phone and saying, hey, calling up the emergency department, well, you guys left this house and it's just a mess. Come back here. I need help. We got to rebuild. We got to clear out this water. We got to do all this stuff, right? You don't call up the emergency department. We do in medicine. People do that every day of their life. How many people are going back to the same type of emergency focused doctors all the time? They just keep going back to these emergency focused doctors.
In Western medicine, you think is emergency focused?
That's what they're trained for, is
even the
disease. They're trained for the state of disease. If you're not in a state of disease, it's not prevention focused. They're trying, like they're tipping their toe right now into prevention. And it's like the prevention. What is our prevention? Prevention is like taking certain images just randomly throughout time. And then our other prevention tool is like, we're going to take your labs on an annual basis. Like, how proactive is that prevention, right? And the tools, let's say if they were to give you some tools of prevention, what would those tools be? Well, the tools that they have are potentially toxic and harmful. They're chemicals, generally, that they would give you, right? So you look at that and you go, man, are these the tools that I want? These are definitely the tools that I want if my house is burning down, or if I'm out of balance in a significant way and there's a disease state that needs to be balanced. But right now, where I'm already somewhat at homeostasis, I should be looking for the person who is going to be giving me things that are not potentially toxic or harmful, things that are not going to be having any other sort of side effect in the body, but they're going to promote health, that are going to provide some level of stability and sustainability of health moving forward. Okay. That was a very long interlude.
Well, you have a product called Gout Out.
Yes.
So I wonder if we kind of bridge to you being very prevention focused and least invasive and avoiding big nasty side effects. I imagine Gout Out is a Chinese herbal formula that you've seen actually work in patients?
100%. Yeah. So we've used this a lot in a lot of our patients. But basically, I prescribe it almost to all of our patients that have gout. Especially if they have a history of gout, then I'll prescribe this for them. If it's their first episode, generally I'll really encourage as much as possible the diet and try to just steer it around that way so that they can correct everything with diet. This is more of a stopgap measure to help them correct the course so that they're not producing more of those uric acid crystals if they need to. It's also, if they're in a significant flare, it'll help reduce the pain and decrease the inflammation and the swelling and prevent the uric acid crystals from being produced additionally so that they can feel better. Right?
What are people traditionally prescribed, and what do you do?
So oftentimes there's this medication called colchicine. It's extracted, it's produced and manufactured within a lab, obviously, and then there's, in order to with a medication, in order to patent a medication, it can't be the exact same compound that exists in nature. So they have to change it in some way within the lab and the process that they go through to do that. So colchicine is a compound that has been shown to be very beneficial for gout. Well, the source of colchicine is a plant that is in gout out. Okay, so yes, your body has to break down the plant products and actually extract the colchicine compound out of the plant in this product, in my product. Okay, but in the medication, it's just a push straight to the system, almost overloading it. Okay, so if you look at that in that way, this is very, very similar in some way, you could say, to the medication itself, except this is balanced out by a whole host of plant-based anthocyanidins, antioxidants, flavonols, all sorts of other plant compounds that are designed to balance out any sort of potentially toxic, harmful effect that might be coming as a result of a singular compound that's delivered.
What happens if you don't address gout and you're just kind of living with all this gout pain? Is that it, or does it lead to more things? Because I imagine the body is also connected, that may lead to a cascade of other things, but what do I know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, so kidney function, it affects kidney function, but mostly what we see it affect is the degradation of your joint surfaces, right? So you start to really wear down your joint surfaces to where you develop arthritis. Eventually you could have fusion take place within the joint. You could get bone on bone because the joint surfaces, the cartilaginous surfaces, have completely worn down. So yeah, gout is definitely something you want to treat. You want to take care of it as early and as quickly as possible. And again, start with the minimally invasive things first. How can I adjust my diet? Is there something that I'm doing potentially in the food that I'm putting in my mouth every single day that could be causing this? And that's usually what the major culprit is. And when people have flares, it's generally because they had some sort of exposure, or they had a weekend, or they had a week, or, it was like holidays. There's some excuse where they're like, well, I just decided to do this, so now I have a flare. Okay. So if you stay really committed to your diet and increasing your organic and well-sourced vegetables and decreasing the poor quality fats, I would say especially on this topic, especially like processed lunch meats, like those kinds of lunch meats, those things you can get in the packages near the deli where it's all just, you can get salami and all sorts of those packaged meats are going to much higher amount of nitrites and all sorts of other chemicals that are going to elicit higher production of uric acid within the body. So avoiding those type of things, a step up would be like, going to the deli and asking them to slice your meat, right? And then a step up from there would be, doing your meat at your house, right? Having your own meat at your house, but not everybody can do that. So it's a lot easier to just say, go to the deli, get your meat there that you want to do, have them slice it for you. You can see that they've sourced that and they've gotten it from a place that you trust. And if they don't get it from a place that you trust, then maybe go to a different place. Okay? Get your meat somewhere else. Go to the local butcher that you trust. Develop a relationship with a local farmer, a cattle rancher, somebody that can help you get a quality source meat and stay healthy and decrease your likelihood of developing uric acid crystals. But if you do have an issue and you want to be steered in the right direction and want some help but don't want to necessarily go to that fire department, okay, you can come and we can evaluate to see if it's ready or appropriate for you to utilize any of these type of herbs or nutrients.
And again, I just mentioned it because it was my story, and that's stories are how people have understood things since the beginning of time. You know, the old cavemen with the pictures on the wall. Stories are important. Stories are important. And my story included not knowing I was on the way to gout and working with you on some of your herbal formulas and hopefully reversing it. I guess I haven't heard you mention gout in the last few labs.
Your uric acid has been in a really good range recently.
All right, but at the time it was elevated for sure. It's just a sign that, you know, you too can improve your life through community health and wellness. Yes. Heber City, Utah, the Be Well Now podcast. How can they reach out to you at CHW or Community Health and Wellness?
Well, you can reach out to us at chwheber.com, or you can also reach directly out to us via text or phone at 435-657-3696.
Be well now, everybody.
Be well now. Namaste.
Namaste.